You can do comedy a lot of different places. There's no place like the Ed Sullivan Theater. No offense. There's no place like the Ed Sullivan Theater, but it's really the people. That's really what I care about, and that's really what...
Stephen Colbert has dominated late-night television for over a decade, becoming one of its most defining and unshakable voices. Yet now, he is saying goodbye in a way almost no one saw coming. Colbert survived a devastating childhood that would have broken most people before they ever reached adulthood. He endured a medical crisis that came dangerously close to ending his life. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the devastating blow that would hit his career and force him off the airwaves. The network insists his departure is purely financial. A clean business decision, nothing more. However, the truth is far more complicated, and the real reason Colbert is saying goodbye will expose deep secrets about the corporate media landscape. The making of Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert was born the youngest of 11 children in a devout Catholic family. His father, James William Colbert Jr., was a renowned immunologist and a medical school dean, a man of science who also took his faith seriously. His mother, Lorna, managed the household and raised the children while her husband built his career. The Colbert household was crowded, noisy, and filled with the kind of chaotic energy that comes from having 11 kids under one roof. Stephen learned early that attention was hard to come by and that he had to work for every laugh. On September 11, 1974, Stephen's life shattered. His father and his two older brothers, the brothers closest to him in age, Peter and Paul, boarded Eastern Airlines Flight 212. The plane was supposed to take them from North Carolina to Connecticut, where the boys were enrolling at the Canterbury School. However, the flight never made it. The plane crashed into a cornfield hill 3 miles short of the runway at Douglas Municipal Airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. The cause was pilot instrument error during heavy fog. Out of 82 passengers on board, 72 perished. Among the victims were James, Peter, and Paul Colbert. Stephen's mother, Lorna, did not have time to process the loss in private. She had 8 remaining children to raise, and she needed to keep moving. She relocated the family to downtown Charleston, South Carolina, a fresh start in a new city where the neighbors did not know about the plane crash. Stephen spent his adolescence deeply isolated. He felt detached from his peers, who could not understand what he was going through. He found solace, not in people, but in books. He read science fiction and fantasy literature obsessively, losing himself in worlds that were not his own. He also played fantasy role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, where he could be someone else, somewhere else, away from the weight of his family's grief. The one thing that made Stephen feel useful at home was making his mother laugh. Lorna was profoundly grieving the loss of her husband and her 2 sons, but Stephen discovered that he had a gift. He could make her smile. He could make her forget, even for a moment, the terrible thing that had happened to their family. Comedy became his therapy. It was not a career choice at first. It was survival. He needed to make his mother laugh, and in doing so, he learned that he was good at making other people laugh too. He shifted his focus toward performance art and theater during his years at the Porter God School in Charleston. He was not the class clown in the traditional sense. He was quieter, more observant, studying the people around him and learning what made them respond. He transferred from Hampton-Sydney College, a small all-male school in Virginia, to Northwestern University's School of Communication in Chicago. He wanted to study serious acting and to learn the craft from the ground up. But Chicago had a different kind of theater scene that would change his life. He joined Chicago's legendary Second City Improv troupe, the same training ground that had produced John Belushi, Gilda Radner, and Bill Murray. There, he worked alongside future comedy icons Amy Sedaris, and Paul Dinello. The three of them developed a sharp, subversively dry performance style that was unlike anything else on the improv scene. They were not afraid to be strange, to go dark, and to push audiences into uncomfortable territory. Those instincts would serve Colbert well in the years to come. He co-created and starred in the cult classic sketch comedy series Exit 57 and the dark satirical high school sitcom Strangers with Candy on Comedy Central. These shows did not make him a household name, but they established his reputation as a brilliant character actor, someone who could disappear into a role and make audiences believe that he was someone else entirely. In 1997, Colbert joined The Daily Show with Jon Stewart as a senior political correspondent. It was there that he engineered the persona that would make him famous. He created a self-important, intentionally obtuse, right-wing pundit character designed to parody the cable news anchors who were dominating the political conversation. The character was not a real person. He was a caricature, a collection of tics and catchphrases that Colbert used to expose the absurdity of the media landscape. The character was so popular that Comedy Central gave him his own spin-off show. The Colbert Report ran from 2005 to 2014, producing more than 1,000 episodes, all filmed entirely in character. The show popularized the word truthiness, which Colbert used to describe information that feels true regardless of objective facts. The word was so culturally significant that the American Dialect Society named it the Word of the Year in 2005. In 2006, Colbert delivered an iconic, highly controversial satirical roast at the White House Correspondents' Dinner while standing just feet away from President George W. Bush. The performance was met with icy silence from the room's political elite, who did not know whether to laugh or be offended. But the video spread across the internet like wildfire, making Colbert a hero to the anti-war left and a target of anger from conservatives. In 2015, CBS chose Colbert to succeed the legendary David Letterman as host of The Late Show, moving into the historic Ed Sullivan Theater in New York City. He permanently retired his fake pundit persona to host purely as his authentic self. The man who had spent decades hiding behind characters was finally ready to be Stephen Colbert. But the grief that he had been channeling into comedy for 50 years was still there, waiting for the moment when he could no longer hold it back. The hidden struggles of Stephen Colbert. Colbert's transition to CBS was not a smooth one. During his first season, which ran from 2015 to 2016, critics and audiences struggled to accept Colbert without his protective report persona. The character that had made him famous was gone, and in its place was a man who seemed unsure of how to present himself. He was not as sharp without the pundit mask. He was not as funny without the fake outrage. The reviews were mixed at best, and audiences tuned out. Ratings plummeted severely, dropping deep into third place behind Jimmy Fallon's The Tonight Show and Jimmy Kimmel's late-night program. The man who had once been a hero to millions was now losing to his competitors. Before we carry on, something I want to share that I think is worth your time. When researchers first mapped this system in 2013, they couldn't understand why nobody had documented it before. It's a dedicated network inside the brain whose only function is to flush out toxic waste while you sleep. And it explains, almost entirely, why some people stay sharp well into their 80s and others don't. Go to brainresearchreport.com or find it linked in the description below. It's one of those things that makes a lot of things suddenly make sense. All right, back to the video. The behind-the-scenes panic at CBS was intense. Industry trade papers reported that executives were floating internal discussions about replacing Colbert or installing a co-host to help stabilize the massive financial losses. The network had invested millions in his show, and the returns were not matching the investment. Colbert knew that his job was on the line, and the pressure was enormous. To save the show, Colbert made a bold decision. He hired Chris Licht as executive producer, a television veteran who had worked on morning news programs and understood how to connect with a broad audience. Together, they radically restructured the program. They leaned heavily into aggressive, highly political nightly live monologues targeting the 2016 presidential election cycle. Colbert stopped trying to be everything to everyone. He went back to what he did best, satirizing the absurdity of American politics. The pivot worked. The ratings slump reversed permanently, and Colbert launched to the #1 spot in late-night television, where he would remain for consecutive years. While his professional life was in chaos, his personal life was a different story. Colbert met his wife, Evelyn Evie McGee Colbert, by chance in 1990. The meeting occurred in a theater lobby at the Spoleto Festival in Charleston, South Carolina. The coincidence was striking. They had grown up on the same street, but had never formally met, separated by their age difference. Colbert has openly detailed that when he looked at her, he instantly knew he was going to marry her. There was no hesitation or doubt. He just knew. They married soon after and have been together ever since. Throughout his meteoric rise from The Daily Show to The Colbert Report to The Late Show, Colbert maintained a strict boundary between his family and his fame. He raised his 3 children, Madeline, Peter, and John, in suburban Montclair, New Jersey, a quiet town far from the chaos of New York City. He deliberately kept them away from the Hollywood spotlight, refusing to bring them to red carpet events or talk about them in interviews. He wanted to give them the stable childhood that he had lost when his father and brothers died. That meant keeping them out of the tabloids and letting them grow up as normal kids, not as the children of a famous man. The professional stresses of his career did not come only from ratings or competitors. He also faced immense pressure during major industry shutdowns, including the writers' strikes of 2007 to 2008, and again in 2023. During those months, production stopped, the screens went dark, and the staff had no income. Colbert had to navigate keeping his employees financially afloat out of his own pocket, while maintaining morale among a crew that did not know when they would be allowed to work again. The financial strain was significant, but the emotional strain of watching people he cared about struggle was worse. During the global pandemic in early 2020, most late-night shows went dark. However, Colbert refused to stop. He broadcast more than 200 episodes from his home basement, a spare dressing room, and an office storage closet. He performed without an audience, without the immediate laugh feedback that every comedian relies on. The silence was jarring. For an improv-trained comedian who fed off the energy of a live crowd, performing into a camera lens with no one laughing was an exhausting psychological adjustment. He did it anyway, because he believed that people needed something to watch while they were trapped in their homes. The pandemic episodes kept Colbert connected to his audience, but they also took a toll on his mental health. The isolation, the stress, the constant fear of getting sick, and the weight of carrying a show with no crew and no support system pushed him to the edge. He kept working because he did not know what else to do. But his body was about to send him a warning that he could not ignore. The medical emergencies that followed almost ended his career before he was ready to say goodbye. The devastating medical emergencies. In late November of 2023, directly following an episode that featured guest David Letterman, Colbert began experiencing extreme abdominal pain at home. He was not sure what was causing it. He thought maybe he had eaten something bad or picked up a stomach bug. He did not want to go to the hospital because he had shows to tape and guests who had traveled to New York to appear on his program. Misinterpreting the severity of his condition, he returned to the studio the next morning, still in agony. He smiled for the cameras, delivered his monologue, and filmed 2 full consecutive episodes of The Late Show, while his body was slowly poisoning itself from the inside. During one of those taped episodes, Chef Jose Andres was a guest. Andres is known for his high-energy personality, his passion for food, and his tendency to grab people and spin them around on camera. During a cooking segment, Andres spontaneously grabbed Colbert and spun him around in a lively dance move. Colbert laughed, went along with it, and finished the segment. But later, he revealed that it was possible that at that exact moment, his appendix had already ruptured inside him. He described the feeling as his insides turning into hot paella, the Spanish rice dish that Andres is famous for. The cameras did not capture his pain because he was too good at hiding it. But the pain was real. After completing the second taping, Colbert's condition worsened dramatically. He had a raging fever. He could not stop shaking from uncontrollable full-body chills. His personal driver, a man named Pablo, who had been with Colbert for years, took one look at him and knew something was seriously wrong. Colbert still wanted to go home. He still wanted to sleep it off. But Pablo and Colbert's wife, Evie, who had arrived at the studio, physically forced him to go straight to St. Barnabas Hospital instead of returning to his house. They would not take no for an answer. When the doctors at St. Barnabas examined Colbert, they discovered that his appendix had not just burst, it had been leaking toxins into his abdominal cavity for hours, perhaps days. He had developed advanced abdominal sepsis, a condition where the body's immune system goes into overdrive, fighting an infection that it cannot contain. Sepsis is life-threatening. It can kill a person in a matter of hours, if not treated aggressively. Colbert had been walking around, telling jokes, and interviewing guests while his blood was slowly being poisoned. The surgeons rushed him into the operating room. They spent hours using aggressive internal tools to completely scrub out his abdominal cavity, removing the toxins and infected tissue that had spread throughout his system. The procedure was brutal and invasive. When Colbert woke up from surgery, he was told that he had come very close to dying. The life-threatening ordeal forced the immediate cancellation of multiple weeks of shows. Colbert spent days in the hospital recovering, and by the time he was discharged, he had lost 14 pounds. That was not the only medical emergency that shaped Colbert's life. When he was a child, he suffered from a severely perforated eardrum in his right ear. The injury was painful and persistent, and it did not heal on its own. Doctors recommended a radical medical procedure to scoop out the inner workings of his right ear, removing the damaged tissue and reconstructing what they could. The surgery was successful in the sense that it stopped the pain and prevented further infection. But the procedure left him permanently, completely deaf in his right ear. He cannot hear anything from that side. If someone whispers into his right ear, he feels nothing but air movement. The silence is total. The biological restriction went beyond hearing. Because of the missing inner ear mechanics and the absence of an eardrum, Colbert cannot safely submerge his head in water. Water that enters his right ear canal has no barrier to stop it from reaching his inner skull, which could cause severe infections or even brain damage. This restriction destroyed his primary childhood aspiration of becoming a professional marine biologist. As a boy growing up in Charleston, South Carolina, surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean and the marshes of the Low Country, he had dreamed of studying sea creatures and exploring the underwater world. That dream ended the day he went deaf in one ear. He could not be a marine biologist if he could not put his head underwater. The radical surgery left him with an asymmetric physical trait that he has learned to use as a party trick. He can voluntarily pop his right ear outward, flexing a muscle that most people cannot control. The structural oddity is visible to anyone sitting across from him. He occasionally shows it off to guests on television, popping his ear as a visual gag to break the tension or punctuate a joke. What the audience does not see is the decades of frustration behind that small movement, the permanent reminder of a childhood dream that was taken away by a surgeon. The appendix rupture and the childhood ear surgery were not the only crises that threatened Colbert's career. Behind the scenes of The Late Show, political and legal controversies were building that would push the show to the edge of cancellation. The controversial side of Stephen Colbert. In late 2024, Donald Trump filed a massive $20 billion lawsuit against CBS. The president claimed that the show, 60 Minutes, had maliciously and deceptively edited an interview with his then-opponent, Kamala Harris. The lawsuit was a legal threat of enormous proportions, not just in terms of the money, but in terms of the message it sent to news organizations across the country. If CBS could be sued for editing an interview, any news outlet could be sued for any editorial decision. On July 1, 2025, while Stephen Colbert was away on a scheduled summer vacation, CBS's parent company, Paramount Global, quietly settled the lawsuit. The terms of the settlement were not announced with a press conference or a public statement. The company quietly agreed to pay Trump $16 million. The settlement did not include any admission of wrongdoing or any acknowledgement that the editing had been improper. It was simply a check written to make the problem go away. The multi-million-dollar settlement terms dictated that the majority of Paramount's payout would directly fund Trump's future presidential library. That meant that CBS's money was not just going to Trump personally. It was going to his legacy, his monument to himself, the building that would bear his name and tell his version of history. The corporate motive for the settlement became clear in the weeks that followed. Paramount's board chair and controlling shareholder, Sherry Redstone, orchestrated the fast settlement to clear political hurdles. The company desperately needed the Trump administration's Federal Communications Commission to approve an impending $8.4 billion merger with Skydance Media. The merger was essential to Paramount's future survival. The settlement was the price of approval. Returning from vacation on July 14, 2025, Colbert was furious. He had not been consulted about the settlement. He had not been given a chance to weigh in. He bypassed corporate warnings and stated on live television that the legal settlement was a big fat bribe designed to buy political favor for the merger. He did not couch his criticism in careful qualifiers. He said what he believed, and millions of viewers watched him say it. Exactly 3 days after that monologue aired, CBS executives announced the complete cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, effective May 2026. The timing was impossible to ignore. 3 days was all the time it took for the network to decide that Colbert's voice was too dangerous to keep on the air. Media watchdogs pointed out a connection that made the situation even more complicated. Skydance Media's chief executive officer, David Ellison, is the son of billionaire Larry Ellison. David Ellison maintains a close personal relationship with Trump. This raised major internal concerns about the future editorial independence of CBS News. If the parent company was willing to settle a lawsuit to please the administration, what would happen the next time a story needed to be told that the administration did not want told? The corporate capitulation triggered a massive crisis inside CBS News. The three remaining veteran 60 Minutes correspondents, Leslie Stahl, John Wertheim, and Bill Whitaker, issued a joint memo stating that they were fighting to prevent the iconic news program from dying amid the political fallout. The memo did not name Colbert directly, but it did not need to. Everyone who read it understood that the same forces that had silenced the late-night host were now targeting the news division. To deflect from the censorship accusations, CBS executives insisted that the cancellation was a purely financial decision. They claimed that The Late Show was bleeding $40 million annually in a declining advertising market. The show cost too much to produce, they said, and the ratings, while still strong, were not strong enough to justify the expense. The explanation was convenient, and few people believed it. CBS completely abandoned traditional late-night television. The network sold Colbert's coveted 11:35 p.m. time slot to media mogul Byron Allen. Under this new business structure, Allen pays all production expenses and retains the advertising revenue. The deal instantly turned CBS's previous millions in losses into a $15 million guaranteed annual profit. The network would make money whether anyone watched or not. The corporate pivot backfired brutally with audiences. While rival hosts Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon pulled in over 2.1 million and 1.3 million viewers, respectively, in the time slot, Byron Allen's replacement program cratered. The show drew a disastrous 995,000 total viewers, fewer than 1 million people watching a time slot that Colbert had dominated for years. CBS had made a business decision that pleased their accountants and angered their audience, but the network was not the only one with a story to tell. Stephen Colbert had something to say about why he was really saying goodbye. Why Stephen Colbert is saying goodbye. The series finale aired on Thursday, May 21st, 2026. That broadcast officially killed off the late-night franchise originally launched by David Letterman in 1993, closing down a 33-year CBS institution. Letterman had passed the torch to Colbert. Colbert had carried it for more than a decade. Now the torch was being put out, not because the audience had stopped watching, but because the people who owned the network had decided that the show was not worth the trouble it caused. Appearing on the third-to-last episode, Colbert's longtime mentor, Jon Stewart, noted that they now shared a unique distinction. Both of them had their shows canceled by Paramount. Stewart, whose own show had ended years earlier under disputed circumstances, did not smile when he said it. During his final week, Colbert directly mocked his corporate boss's handling of the Trump settlement. He joked on air that they could take his money, but they would never take his dignity. Then he added that they could, however, purchase his dignity for the low price of $16 million, adding that he needed the cash. The audience laughed, but the laughter had an edge. Everyone in the room knew that the $16 million was not a joke. It was the exact amount that CBS had paid to settle the lawsuit. Colbert was telling the truth, and he was using humor to make sure that the truth was heard. Rock star Bruce Springsteen appeared as a final guest and openly voiced the truth that Colbert could not explicitly say on air. Springsteen stated that Colbert lost his show simply because the president cannot handle jokes and corporate executives wanted to appease him. The audience applauded. The cameras captured Colbert's face, and for a moment, the mask slipped. He looked grateful that someone else had said it out loud. While Colbert maintained total class during his final bow to protect his staff's exit packages, industry executives confirmed the real reason he left was an untenable corporate environment. Comedy was being policed to ensure smooth sailing for multi-billion-dollar media mergers. The same lawyers who had advised settling the Trump lawsuit were now advising that Colbert's brand of satire was too risky to keep on the air. The network was not canceling him because he was unpopular. They were canceling him because he was too popular with the wrong people. Rock legend Sir Paul McCartney made a surprise final appearance on the last episode. He handed Colbert a framed photograph of the Beatles performing on The Ed Sullivan Show in the very same theater where Colbert had taped his final broadcast. The gesture was simple, but powerful. McCartney was telling Colbert that he belonged in the same lineage as the greatest performers who had ever stood on that stage. The corporate bosses could cancel his show, but they could not cancel his legacy. In a final act of irony, Colbert's emotional farewell broadcast pulled in a staggering 6.7 million viewers. That number completely obliterated every other show on television that night. Colbert was the undisputed #1 host in late night at the exact moment he was being forced out. The ratings proved that the network's decision had nothing to do with audience demand and everything to do with political appeasement. While his 11-year run at CBS is permanently over, Colbert has confirmed to The Hollywood Reporter that he has no intention of retiring from entertainment. He is currently in early secretive development meetings to create an entirely new, independent show free from network corporate ownership. He has learned that the old model of late-night television, where a single network owns the time slot, the studio, and the host's voice, is broken. He intends to build something new, something that cannot be taken away by a merger or a lawsuit or a president who does not like jokes. Stephen Colbert leaves behind a 33-year legacy that includes some of the most important political satire of the 21st century. And he is not finished. The man who turned grief into comedy, who turned a late-night show into a nightly ritual for millions of Americans, is already planning his next act. Whatever it is, it will be worth watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like and subscribe to our channel for more updates.